Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education regular meeting for September 11th, 2019. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Carlin.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
Herzog.
Here.
Olmsted.
Here.
Peschel.
Here.
Szilagyi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. We are very fortunate tonight to have two students from Lakeside Elementary who are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd like to welcome forward Gabby Weiss and Peyton Dorn.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We always like to have students at our board meetings because our guiding principle is students first. And that's a good reminder to us of why we are here. So Peyton, we want to thank you for coming tonight, bringing your mom along with you. And Gabby, thank you for joining us and bringing your mom. Hope you have a good evening. You're welcome. You may stay for the meeting, but if you have homework to do or some other important reason to leave, we certainly understand. Thank you. Okay, next we move on to board and administrative reports. I had the privilege of representing this board last evening at the CISA 6 Board of Control. That's a regional group of roughly 41 school districts from the area. And Mr. Knightsky, who had come here and helped this board develop a new mission statement, did the same thing last night with that board. So it was very interesting to hear the input of that group. I also want to thank Dr. Cartwright, who was both diligent and vigilant in following up on a couple of issues that citizens had brought to my attention. And she attended to those in a very timely manner. And the parent feedback on that was very favorable, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, I want to address a little different topic than we usually do in the President's report, but I think it's appropriate today. It's not very often that we have a special day in our nation's history, an anniversary date that falls on a board meeting, but that's certainly true today. What has come to be known as 9/11 or September 11th will be forever etched in our nation's history in terms of the terror attacks that occurred that day in several locations, including Washington, D.C., New York City, and a field in Pennsylvania. I know that we had several classes and groups within our city that took time to honor the memory of those who lost their lives on that day or a result of those terror attacks. And not only those who were in those airplanes or in those buildings, but also the EMTs and the firefighters and the police officers and other first responders who willingly came to the attention of those who were in need. So I think it's appropriate that we as a group here take and observe a moment of silence in honor of those who lost their lives on or as a result of the 9/11 terror attacks. Thank you. For me, serving on this Board of Education is both an honor and a privilege, and I respect everyone who serves around this table. I try to hold myself to high expectations as far as how I interact with others. And at our last board meeting, while I was dealing with a headache, which might explain my lack of patience, I don't think it excuses it, or at least it doesn't for me. So, while I have privately apologized to Mr. Peschel for my impatience shown at our last meeting, it's appropriate for me to apologize to my fellow board members for my lack of patience. And I do take responsibility, and I sincerely apologize to all of you for any pain I might have caused at the last meeting. And I am prepared to exercise greater patience, which I think you have come to see in the past as we move forward. So I apologize, I'm sorry, and thank you. With that, let's move on to the superintendent's report.
Absolutely. So we have a wonderful person with us tonight. This is her very first board meeting. It's from Oshkosh North High School, Callao. We greatly appreciate you being here with us, and she is our student representative. And so we're going to start right away with your report from Oshkosh North High School.
As Dr. Cartwright just said, my name is Cabal, and I'm a senior this year at Oshkosh North. So far school has just started, but we have already had so many things happen. Right before school started, we held a welcome back staff breakfast for our staff, and they all enjoyed a healthy continental breakfast while we introduced the new staff members, as well as some of our students reported out on Link Crew and student council activities. Our Oshkosh North Link leaders and students from Pride and Sources of Strength also put together an all-school assembly to encourage our students to get up and moving, especially to help our freshmen transition into high school. And we also had some t-shirts and gift cards given to students, to the winners who had completed their bingo cards during our open house. Student Council also welcomed back our staff and students this past Monday by providing them with some snacks and water bottles, and we partnered with Verb. And the fall sports season is off and running with a full slate of activities. The North boys and girls cross-country teams have 2 meets under their belts already and will participate in the Shawano Invite this Saturday. The North freshman, JV, and varsity football teams are already a third of their way through their season, and with the varsity team playing in Appleton East this Friday. Our varsity team has played 2 competitive games the past 2 Fridays as they look for their first victory of the season. Our North Superfans are also doing an amazing job so far by bringing the spirit to our games. The North Dance Team also continues to entertain our fans at halftime of the home football games as they prepare for the competition season this winter. Moving on to our North Girls Golf, they placed 11th out of 17 teams on Monday at the Sheboygan North Invite, and will have a busy month of September as the Lady Spartans have a 2-2 record in the FVA so far. And our school is led by the juniors, Grace Miller and Haley Brunk. Our North girls, actually, with our swimming and diving team, kicked off their season last night with a dual meet in Fond du Lac, and the girls are also competing in a relay meet at Appleton West on Friday, and the Appleton East Pentathlon this Saturday. The Spartans' return of junior state qualifier Allie Pecor brings high hopes to the season as well, and this will also be the 13th year that the North girls swimming and diving co-ops with Lourdes. The North girls tennis also played at Kaukauna last night and will be participating in the Nicollet Invite this Friday and Saturday. And our volleyball team will host Appleton East on Thursday, and all 3 teams are in action this Saturday, with the JV and varsity teams competing in the Fond du Lac Invite and the freshmen playing in the Kimberly Invite. And last but not least, the North boys soccer hosted Appleton East last night and will be hosting Neenah tomorrow. And our JV Spartans will also be hosting our rival Oshkosh West tomorrow at 4:30. Today also, as Dr. Herzog mentioned, today is 9/11, and as a day of service, our community students today went out into the community and beautified school gardens as well as other places such as the cemetery and at Bethlehem and Miravita. And unfortunately, the C2 students did not get to go out due to the weather, and they will be planning on doing that on Monday. Coming soon, we have our fall play. It is being directed by our seniors, Nolan Spanbar and Melinda Miller, and it is called The 12 Angry Jurors. And what this play is about is there's been a murder, and the 12 jurors are deciding if the suspect is guilty or not. And the auditions are actually being held next week for anyone. And soon coming up, homecoming week is on the week of October 13th. The dance is on the 19th. And the theme this year is Big City Nights. So our hallway will be decorated as a big famous street. And the homecoming dress closet is the Rotary Interact Club this year is in charge of it, and anybody is welcome to come and grab a dress. They are all free. And Spooktacular is coming up after homecoming as well. See you again next month.
Nice job.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Very nice job. Tonight, we would normally also hear from our Oshkosh West High School representative. They had just had elections last week, and so she will be coming and joining us shortly, but this would be Amelia Smith, and we're looking forward to having her this time next month, and so that way she can join us in these sessions. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started to our superintendent's good news report. Last week, Tuesday, marked the start of the 2019-2020 school year, and the first day of school was filled with so much excitement and so many smiles. While it was impossible to capture all of the amazing things happening on that first day, we did create a short video to help our community see and experience the first day of school in the Oshkosh Area School District. The video can be found on this slide, and I invite you all to take a look and see our first day smiles. Great things are happening in our district, and we are so excited for the year ahead. The last school year was filled with successes for members of the Oshkosh West forensics team. 2 students received 3rd place at state, and 3 students qualified and competed at nationals this past spring. In fact, 2 forensic students qualified to attend the national competition in Dallas, Texas. However, we are extremely proud of the entire team, and we're extremely proud of the individual accomplishments as well as the group accomplishments of everybody on the forensics teams. Great job, Oshkosh West Forensics. South Park Middle School kicked the Panther way on the first day of school with a fun-filled assembly. This year, the school had the Milwaukee Bucks Rim Rockers show off their skills prior to the student team building games. Students were reminded of the basic tenets of the Panther way: be respectful, responsible, and safe. Although I will say, I think one of the Facebook posts that they put on there was of these individuals from Milwaukee Bucks Rim Rockers, not our students, doing some trampoline hoop kind of thing, tricks going on in the gym. Our teachers are constantly strengthening their own skills and abilities. In fact, 3rd through 5th grade classroom teachers came together for an engineering workshop during the first week back. Teachers explored the engineering and elementary unit they will be teaching in their classrooms starting this school year to go along with their science units. We're excited to see our students engaged in this innovative and hands-on learning. 3 students from the Oshkosh Area School District were recently named semifinalists in the annual National Merit Scholarship Program. These academically talented high school seniors have an opportunity to continue in the competition to receive a National Merit Scholarship in spring 2020. Congratulations and best of luck to Peter Berry and Max Reed from Oshkosh West High School and Andrew McAvoy from Oshkosh North High School. Congratulations to the Oshkosh North High School dance team. I had the honor of watching them compete, and I'm not surprised at all that they took 1st place at the Something to Cheer About dance competition. The team competed against 3 other area teams, and their $1,000 winning prize will help them pay for our new hip-hop shoes for the upcoming competitions this season. As you know, when we were looking at Smith and the Smith closure and having the community forums, some of the feedback that we had received from our community were a few things. One of the things that they expressed were concerns related to some of the school crossings for if there was a merger between Jefferson and Smith Elementary School. Proud to report that we were able to hire additional, I should say, Oshkosh Police Department, we were able to hire additional crossing guards, and those crossing guards are in place. And so that has been highly successful. There's also a walking school bus, as you might say, that is occurring and has been organized as well. The first 2 days of school, I was there at Jefferson Elementary School, and things were running extremely smooth. It was very nice to see things happening. In fact, on that first day, albeit it was rainy as all get out, and I will say quite sincerely, in my attempt to try to keep our children dry, I was soaking wet. But within the first hour of school, not a parent could be found. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that because they felt that everything was safe, secure, and running smoothly. Mm-hmm. And our teachers were extremely proud. I had a wonderful conversation with our art teacher over there, because by doing this combination, we know now larger schools, larger number of students, same class sizes or similar class sizes. However, we have a full-time Phi Ed teacher, full-time art teacher, and full-time music teacher. And so I had a conversation with the art teacher for which she reflected. She says, you know, I can now completely set up my art room. I felt as though I'm able to go ahead and put things in place. And I also now have the time that I need in order to go ahead and set up some more in-depth art projects for our students because I'm here full time. So I wanted to report some of that benefits back out to you. In addition to listening to our community, we also heard from them that they wanted to have an opportunity to really kind of be able to have a tour and a final closure to the building itself for Smith Elementary School. Originally, yesterday, Oshkosh Area School District had put out the information that we were having school tours and a farewell for the Smith building, and that is going to be on September the 17th. That's next Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Today, I was going around visiting in schools and talking with different community members, also listened and heard some additional feedback from the community. Some saying, you know, it's really difficult to come on a weeknight and wanting to have maybe an additional opportunity maybe on a weekend day. So I just want to let you know that we are being responsive to that request, and we're adding an additional day in addition to what we published yesterday. So we will update our communications out to reflect this. But so not only is it Tuesday, September 17th from 6 to 8:30, but we are also adding on Saturday, September 21st from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So this is an opportunity for former Smith Elementary School families, alumni, staff, community members to come and attend the event to say farewell and celebrate the school's history. It will give you an opportunity to meet with fellow community members, walk the halls. All are invited. No registration is required. And it's a come and go as you please. So it's not like a formal tour, but we will have people on hand to maybe answer a little bit of questions, some of the background there. And we're working right now to put together some highlighted information related to Smith School. So we just wanted to make sure we took time to allow our community to be aware of this opportunity and to have that opportunity to have one last look at the facility itself. We are all committed to building community through education. As superintendent, I continue to be committed to be present and engaged in our schools and throughout Oshkosh. On the screen, you will see just a few examples of where I've been spending my time. And one shift I will be doing for this year is rather than just listing school site visits, we're going to go ahead and start listing out specific school names, just so the individuals know exactly where has she been and what's going on. And please also be aware that even though a school may only be listed up there once, does not mean that I've only been there once. May have been up there multiple times. And so, again, it's just demonstrating the level of commitment that all of us have to our schools and to our community as a whole. And with that, I'm going to turn this over for our district administrator supplemental report. This week was a very significant week because on Monday was the first facility advisory committee meeting. And we are committed to the board to providing you updates related to those meetings. So I'm asking Dr. Gunlock at this time to come forward in order to present us with a very high-level overview of the meeting from Monday.
Good evening. As we stated last time, we were going to be bringing these back after each of the subsequent meetings, and as we said last time, we always start with the committee charge. This was the charge that you gave to the committee as you created them. In short, they were charged with taking a look at what are the options around a 3 to 4 track elementary and an 8 to 10 track middle school environment in terms of increasing efficiencies, and both educationally and fiscally, and then bring recommendations back to the board. So that's the committee charge. We had our first meeting, as Dr. Cartwright said, yesterday, or actually 2 days ago, on Monday, at Oak Lawn Elementary School Media Center. That was at 5:30 to 8:30. All the meetings will be from 5:30 to 8:30. This is a picture from the meeting. You can see we're engaged with Joe Schrader, who is the facilitator for the meeting. It went very well. It was nice that being in Oak Lawn's Media Center, it's a beautiful facility, and they were terrific hosts. We also stood up our Facilities Advisory Committee website. So if you go to our main webpage, you'll see it'll be right under Quick Links. It's also under the Home section, so you can get to it from multiple spots. And all of the information, including, it starts with the committee charge, the schedule of the meetings, and all the associated materials, including all the presentations that are given at the meeting and in support of the meeting, will be posted here on an ongoing basis. The first meeting, as you can see, was packed. We actually did get done a little early, even though it was with such a packed agenda. We started with welcome, introductions, history, and the facility advisory process. Spent some time going over the schedule, the objectives, establishing committee norms, and then Julie Conrad and Kim Brown gave a discussion on the instructional benefits of 3 to 4 track elementary, 8 to 10 track middle schools, very similar to what you heard here at the board level. There was a district facilities background and enrollment data was provided, facility study overview and cost analysis of the facility. What we were trying to do was get the facility advisory committee up to the same point that the board was when you created the committee in the first place. So that was, you've seen all of that information before. We gave a brief introduction to the referendum background, going all the way back into the 90s, and also the most recent 3 referenda that had been passed in 2012, 2014, and 2016. Sue Schnorr gave some information on debt information, how that all works in terms of school district budgets, as well as the fiscal benefits of 3 to 4 track elementary and 8 to 10 track middle schools. And lastly, we focused our conversations on background on the district facility work that had been done to date in terms of trying to keep our facilities updated. So that was meeting number 1. It was kind of like sipping from a fire hose for some of them, and we realized that. It was a lot of information to take in. There were ample opportunities for questions, and I'm sure there's going to be more questions coming up in the future. So what's next? We have our Facility Advisory Committee meeting number 2 next Monday, the 16th. That'll be at Merrill Middle School Media Center, same time. And we'll be introducing the framework of a conceptual master plan. In other words, how in a 3 to 4 track, 8 to 10 track mode, what are the potential options that could be considered to make all the puzzle pieces fit. So that'll be the primary part of our next meeting. And then we'll bring what we learned back from that at a subsequent board meeting. So. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Pash?
Thank you. Thank you for all of this information. So
Sure.
I appreciate. I like that it's also on the front page of the website.
Mhm.
And it's front and center. So I enjoy that, and I think the public will too.
Mhm.
So thank you. I think my only question is that you said that there was a lot of people there. So about how many do you think were there?
I think we hit 15 people of the committee, and we knew that some people were not able to make the first committee meeting, and they'll be coming in 2 subsequent meetings. So we anticipate the second meeting will actually have more people.
Okay. And just in general, the makeup of everyone that was present.
It was if you'll remember when we created the committee, we kind of laid, the one slide I didn't put up was a repeat of the actual,
Sure.
of the committee group and which stakeholder groups were we looking at hitting. There were, of course, there were a lot of parents there. There were students there. There were community members there from all sorts of different stakeholder groups.
To
Go
go a
ahead.
little bit deeper into that, so we had our OVRI representative was there, our Jason White was there, our chamber representative was there. We also had our representative from minority populations, parent or a community member. We also had one of our student representatives there, and our other one will be joining us next Monday, so that they're both there. We also had parents. We had parents from a variety of backgrounds. So I had a parent of a student with a disability, who also has students without disabilities. Had another parent that was there. We had a custodian there. We had a paraprofessional there. We had teachers there. So though it was 15, and we had business people there as well. So and a previous school board member.
Yes.
And so though it was
Matt Wiedenhoff.
15, it was highly diverse and highly representative of our community.
Good. Thank you. That's all I had.
Hmm? Okay.
Thank you very
Stay
much.
tuned. We'll be back.
Dr. Dunlap. Thank you, Dr. Dunlap. other district administrator reports?
No, ma'am, at this time, I turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. I know there's at least one committee report. Mrs. Szilagyi had contacted me today, so we'll start with her.
All right, thank you. So yes, the Education Committee met last Thursday, September 5th. We had 2 presentations at the meeting. The first one was an update on the professional development that was presented by Dr. Brown and Ms. Conrad. So they gave us a little background on the history of professional development. It used to focus on questions about student learnings. So what do we expect students to learn? How do we know if they've learned it? What do we do if they didn't learn it? What do we do if they already know it? So it was really focused on student learning. The new approach is called collective teacher efficacy. And research shows that it actually has a more profound impact on student outcomes than those kind of learner-based questions. So I will read the definition of what collective teacher efficacy is. It is defined as staff's shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes, including those who are disengaged or disadvantaged. It's based more around how the teaching is done versus what is taught. So example questions that would be asked now is what is our observable vision of a learner? What is our evidence-based reality? What is our learning? What is our action and observable impact? What is our reflection? And what is our customized support? So you can just tell by those different questions, it gets a little deeper and more reflective. And the idea is to empower and engage both students and teachers in their work. One analogy I liked is it said teachers are provided with a toolkit of items to help direct them on where to go when different questions arise, which was similar to playing a hand of cards. When we play cards, we have different cards and we choose when to play them. So they said that's kind of what the toolkit's like, is that the teachers get to choose when to use those. This has been implemented now at both our high schools, at Merrill, Tipler, and Webster Middle School, and then at Carl Traeger, Shapiro, Oakwood, Roosevelt, and Washington elementary schools. And next year it will be implemented at all of the schools. It is funded half by the district, and the Community Foundation is discussing funding sources to fund the other half for us. So that was our first presentation. Our second one was on the social emotional learning pilot. I'm also going to read the definition there. I know social emotional learning is kind of a buzzword right now, but I liked this clear definition. It says it's a process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So we talked about how sometimes kids show up at school and they don't have this skill set, and so they are given a consequence when they don't know how to properly deal with a situation. And we know that we need to teach students these skill sets in order to help them deal with those kind of difficult situations, and especially to help them cope as they get older and stress and anxiety just continues to grow. So there was a committee formed to decide what this curriculum would look like. It was counselors, behavior interventionists, and executive team members, and they looked at 3 different curriculums. The one they chose is called Sanford Harmony. This program's funded by a philanthropist that just wants to help children's lives be better. His name is Denny Sanford, so it's named after him. He collaborated with Arizona State University to roll out this program in 2014, and it's already been updated twice now. Some of the other programs they looked at were last updated in 2011, so they thought this one shows a seriousness to staying on top of research. It has 22 lessons with supplemental activities. It's all available online. It's easy for teachers to use. The delivery is made by the teacher instead of the counselors, so the counselors liked it because then they can take more of a coaching role, and that gives them more time also to work with Tier 2 students. The other advantage is that it's actually free. They did note that even if this cost money, this is what they would have chosen, but because the gentleman who designed it in collaboration with Arizona State University, his goal was just to help students' lives be better, he provides it for free. So it is being rolled out right now at E. Cook, Franklin, Lakeside, Merrill, and Webster elementary schools, and it will be rolled out hopefully at all the it's planned to be rolled out at all the elementary schools next year. Consideration will be made as to whether or not to conduct another field study for middle schools to see what kind of thing they could adopt. And high schools are going to move toward Tier 2 PBIS. And that was everything for that meeting. Our next meeting is, let's see, it's printed right here on the back. It is October 3rd, and we're going to discuss high school course additions, deletions, and modifications.
Oh, that's my favorite one.
All right, so.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Salaji. Does any other committee chair have a report tonight?
If I may, Madam President.
Absolutely.
I do apologize, going backwards just a tad bit on our agenda.
Can we go on because we're having technical difficulties?
Okay. So let me ask a question. Would the board be amendable, please, to allow us to have an additional report as once we go a little bit further along within our agenda tonight?
Yes, although it appears that.
I would need a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Guess we're good.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Amelia Smith and I want to apologize sincerely from the bottom of my heart that I'm late, and I will go on and excuse my voice. I was just at a swim meet last night, so I don't have one very much of one anymore. So, hi again, my name is Amelia Smith and I am the new student body president at Oshkosh West High School. The vice president is Sophie Steinmetz, secretary Hannah Eaton, and public relations Justin Emmett. So our athletics this year have been actually going very well so far, and it's only been the second week. So the football game last week, Oshkosh West won 48-21 against Appleton West, and that's very nice. In the volleyball game, our team had swept the game against Appleton West, Kimberly. And for the swim meet last night, we, our swim team won, absolutely demolished the Appleton West Kimberly. So we are very proud of our athletics right now, and there are several other teams that have been doing very well. Our music programs, we have 4 choirs at Oshkosh West, 4 bands, and 2 orchestras. And as of right now, they're all doing voice testing or chair seating, competing for those top spots in our music department, and it's going very well right now. The 2019 AP scores had come out in the summer, this past summer, and Oshkosh West we are very proud of our AP scores because this past year, 88% of our students that took the AP Gov test had passed. And for all of these tests, the national average is 56%. For AP Euro, 86%, A Push is 68.9%, AP Lit, 80%, and AP Lit and AP Language, there are not many students, so even if one student doesn't pass, that could set it to 80%, so the majority of the students could have passed. And then AP Language is 86%. And AP Language is not even offered at, or the class is not even offered at Oshkosh West. There's actually new AP courses that teachers are going like up and beyond, over and beyond what they're like there to do, because they're teaching these AP courses outside of class, during W hours, during lunches, and it's just really awesome. Like, there's a new world study, government study AP course that they're offering for students this year, and Mr. Stelflug is teaching it outside of class, and so it's very nice. And teachers are saving us countless thousands of dollars because of this. Our Chromebooks, we just got new Chromebooks, and all of the students are very happy with them. They are very small and compact, so that's very nice, and we can sign up for our new W hours with them. and Canvas and work on math homework on it. So that's awesome. The Wildcat Cafe is open, and we have 2 locations this year, and that's very new for us. So we're making lots of money on that, and that goes towards the care days this coming spring and activities throughout the year. This past week, first week of school, we did some very important things, and during our homerooms, we went through ALICE training, and that was very educational for all of the students, and now we're all prepared for the future. And then this is very new at Oshkosh West. There are groups that are going into underclassmen W hours, and I didn't explain this before. W hours are a time in our day where we can meet with teachers, and we all have the same 30-minute time to do homework or meet with teachers or go to clubs and activities. And so certain clubs like SAVE, Student Athletes, or any of the countless clubs we have at West are actually volunteering to take on and teach the freshmen homerooms, and that's very awesome because it shows leadership within our school. Upcoming events, homecoming, that's very exciting for everyone. It's October 7th through 11th, and the football game is October 11th at 7, a home game, obviously. And our theme this year for the dance is Hollywood. So I hope you have a great month, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I guess there are no other reports, and so we'll go on to the next 2 agenda items. The first is the non-agenda related public forum. No one signed up for that one. And the agenda related public forum is after that, and we had no one sign up for that. So we will move right into workshops. We have 3 this evening. We'll start with the budget workshop with Mrs. Schnorr.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I apologize. As I was reviewing my notes to get ready for this evening, I realized I didn't include any kind of budget summary in your packet. You just got a staff report and this presentation and no other information. So I apologize for that. So between now and the next board meeting, you will have a summary of the budget. There's a 4-step process. We create a budget, which is much more complicated than just creating a budget. We have to publish that budget, which we have, and it should have been in the paper yesterday. And then we hold a public hearing, and then the board adopts a budget and sets the tax levy. So we will hold the public hearing at this next school board meeting, which probably some of the same information will be presented, and you'll have a budget summary then too. We had some additional revenues in from 18-19, so in the 19-20 school year. This is probably one of the best budgets K-12 education has seen in a really long time. They allowed, as you know, we're controlled by the revenue limit formula that sets what we can tax as a school district. We've had anywhere from when that first was implemented, $250 per student increases, to the Act 10 year where we had a $500 per student decrease, to years where we had 0. And this year we actually had $175 per pupil revenue limit increase. It's pretty sad that we're excited about $175 per pupil, but it really made a significant difference. Plus the state legislature is trying to help districts that are low spenders. And Oshkosh has always been a low spender, so we got another $175 per pupil in low spending provision. Now, 125, I'm sorry. And both of those say pending board approval. Because they're in the revenue limit formula, they're going to increase our tax levy. So you as a board will have to, at the end of October, approve a tax levy that includes those increases. Then the governor's veto increased the per pupil aid by $88 per pupil. So all of those together gave us $3.8 million in additional revenue this year. Then you as a board chose to use that revenue to give all employee groups salary schedule advancement, and the CPI is 2.44%. So all of our employee groups got that. This budget includes an 8% increase in health insurance and a 5% increase in dental, which is a $3.8 million expenditure. So they come very close to balancing out. As you can see, the revenue is a little less than the expenditures, but those are just those major categories. In the overall budget that will be presented is a balanced budget. But these just outline the major areas. This shows the estimated tax levy. I always weigh on the conservative side when I show you a preliminary tax levy, because I would rather come to you the end of October and say the tax levy is going up but not this high. This is conservative on the high side. We will probably get more of a state aid increase than I projected, but this also projects a 0 student growth. So if we do end up increasing in students, that will affect the tax levy. This does include that $175 per pupil and $125 per pupil. All of that is included in here. But I was really conservative on what I think our state aid is going to go up. So I'm hoping that this is worst case scenario. And even so, worst case scenario is still looking at a 7% tax levy increase with almost a 6% mill rate increase. I was also conservative on the property value increase. I think property values will go up more than 1%, but I think that's being conservative too. And again, if property values go up more than 1%, that affects the mill rate. The mill rate won't go up as much then. That makes sense. So our next steps are at the September 25th meeting. We will have a budget hearing where I will present some of this information again, and the budget hearing is an opportunity for the public to come and express their comments or concerns on the budget. Then also at that meeting, you will approve the budget. It's a preliminary budget, but you will approve a budget that evening. Then at the October 23rd school board meeting, you will vote on a tax levy. And then in November, December, if there's any budget changes needed, we'll present those. Usually the budget that's voted on at the September 25th meeting has an estimated tax levy and an estimated state aid, so we'll need to change some of those. We also come to you with a carryover for building budgets. So then we make all those budget changes later in November. Questions? You know, that was pretty much a broad overview, but.
Does anybody have any comments, questions?
That's exciting.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever, I've been on since 2011, I don't think I've ever seen an increase.
Right. I've never been excited about a school budget before. Well, I mean, budgeting is exciting anyway,
It's
but,
so exciting.
but it's exciting to actually have resources that, you know, we're not really strapped.
Feels like free money.
Yeah, kind of does. And that we're able to give employees a relatively decent increase. I think
Yes.
that
That
really
feels-
helps, and they were all very appreciative.
Good.
Very much so.
Okay.
Well, Mrs. Schnorr, we really appreciate all the effort that goes into this process. While it looks on paper somewhat like a simple process because it only has 4 steps, I know it's much more complex than that, and there's a lot more that goes into the preparation than a 4-step process might seem.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate your efforts to bring the board up to speed, and thank you for your efforts on this. So thank you very much. With that, I guess.
I say put.
You
Oh, yeah, I was that way.
You don't have to move. We move on to the second workshop, which is health insurance, and that would be Mrs. Schnorr and others, it looks like.
I'll invite our folks from AFG is our benefits consulting group. Oh, that's good.
This is Jan's first meeting.
Jan is our new consultant this year. You've met Marty before, but Marty Burns has been our consultant for many years. And we had Craig Bees last year who retired from AFG, so now we have Jan Stage, which we are very excited about. So we welcome him to our meeting.
Thank you.
Per your request, the board bid out health insurance again this year. Oh, good grief. Sorry. There. We received bids from the 5 major providers, similar to the groups that we received bids from last year. Our Strategic Benefits Committee interviewed 2 vendors. They interviewed Anthem and Network Health. They did not interview GHT simply because the district is familiar with them, and we just decided not to take their time or our committee's time interviewing somebody that we know they're a known entity. We know what they provide. We've had them as the district's insurance for a long time. So the bid process was we had representatives from all employee groups were present during the interviews. As I said, we interviewed those 2 vendors. I budgeted an 8% increase. Our renewal is January, so it would take effect in January. Our district claim rate for 2018 was 115%, which means that our claims are higher than the premiums we pay in by more than 100%. But the good news is, as of the data that we have as of 2019, we are at 97%. Now, granted, that's still not ideal because insurance companies need a wedge for administration costs.
Expenses, but it's way better than we were last year at this time. So that's always good news in our world.
Do they like to see like an 8%? Is that kind
It's
of?
about 8 or 9% administrative. GHT has pretty low administrative expenses, so.
Mhm.
I think it's also noteworthy is when we had this conversation this time last year, the claim rate for the prior year was 123%. So we have now decreased to 115%. And again, we're 3/4 way through the year, so we still have a quarter to go. But thus far, we're at 97%. So our trending if it comes in under 115% for 2019, we are starting to trend downward. So I just wanted to apprise the board of that, and want to give credit where credit is due on that, because there's been an exceptional amount of work being completed on behalf of our wellness team, as well as partnerships with many of our employee groups on this, as well as onboarding some new initiatives such as our teledoc program. So there is a combination of a variety of different things that we were able to start decreasing those claim rates.
Thank you. And there's still more we could do. I think one of the initiatives of our new strategic plan is to continue to look at employee wellness and work on employee wellness. So Group Health Trust, GHT, is our current provider. They have been our provider since 2012. They have a very broad coverage network. You're really hard pressed to find a provider that's not in the GHT United network. When they put in their bid for this poll proposal, they were at a 9% increase. But because we budgeted 8%, this was 252, well, actually it's 233,000, sorry, I put the wrong number, but it's 233,000 above the budget. So we did go back to them to say, what could we do to knock it down a percent? Actually, AFG does that, I don't. And one of the things they came forward with was we currently have a $2,000, $4,000 deductible. Now the employee only pays $500, $1,000. And then the district has an HRA that fills in the gap. To get down to an 8%, they would raise that deductible to $2,250 and $4,500. So the district would end up being responsible for more of that money through our HRA, unless, as I present in a later slide, unless we increase the employee's deductible. Does that make sense? This keeps bouncing on me. Network Health, it was the company last year that was the lowest bid. They also bid this year. It's a narrow network, which means it's almost like an HMO in that there is no out-of-network coverage. If you go out of network, like with GHT, if you go out of network, you're still covered. It's just covered at a higher deductible and higher copays. With the network health proposal, there is no coverage if you go out of network. And it's a pretty restrictive network. It's the Ascension, Mercy, that's their network. Approximately 30 to 35% of our participants' claims are in this network, not necessarily people, but claim dollars are in this network. And their proposal was a 4.7 increase over our current 2019 premium. So it would be about $1,096,000 more than we're currently spending, and $1.1 million over 8% increase. Or I'm sorry, 768,000 above a 8% increase. Below, I'm sorry. Sorry. I wrote a whole bunch of numbers on my sheet and now I have to remember which
You
one's
only
which.
have one eye.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that doesn't help either.
So what is the savings on that, Mr. Schnorr?
769.
768, you said?
Yeah, so it's 1,096,000 over what we're currently spending.
And the GHT at 9% would be just over 2 million. So there was about
1.165.
1.16 million in savings.
Savings, okay. Thank you.
But less than half of our claims are coming out of this network.
Yes.
Way
So it
less,
would be
yeah.
a big disruption.
Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
Does this mean when you say it's a narrow network, if people have this insurance and are traveling, say, out of state, does that mean they're not covered?
If it's an emergency, that's always covered.
Okay.
Okay.
And there is a broad network for
Yeah.
people, like retirees, if you
Yes.
live in Florida, correct?
So there is a kind of a wrap network for people that live out of the area. But for the most part, people who live in this area would need to go, in order to get any coverage, would need to use the network Anthem Providers, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, thank you. Okay.
Then the lowest bid is actually from Anthem. And they also have a narrow network, but theirs is different than the narrow network from network, is that there's still out-of-network coverage. So if you go to an out-of-network provider, there's still coverage. The employee has to meet a $4,000, $8,000 deductible. So the difference between this one and network health, if you go out of network, there's no coverage, period. With Anthem, if you go out of network, it's covered, but you have to meet that level of deductible before it's paid.
And is that the same way that they only pay the 1,500 and the district picks up the rest, or is that
No.
all on their?
It would be all on them.
There's no HRA coverage for out-of-network
Right, okay.
services.
But on the plus side, approximately 70% of our participant claims are in this network. It's only a 3% increase over what we are currently paying in 2019. So the fact that we budgeted an 8%, it's actually below what's in our budget. Some of the downsides is that they increase participant drug copays, which are pretty minimal. Our GHT has a value drug that is at 0. Anthem does not have a 0, but some of those drugs could be gotten from the Three Waves Clinic. So we had encouraged some more participation towards the clinic because they can get some prescriptions at the clinic. But employees would be paying more out of pocket for many of their prescriptions. The other downside is that they don't talk with our current HRA provider. So we have a provider called Diversified Benefit Services, DBS, that administers our HRA plan. So once the employee meets their $500,000 deductible, the claims go to DBS and they pay the claims until someone has reached $2,000, $4,000 when GHT kicks in. Well, Anthem doesn't talk to DBS, so the employee would have to submit all of those claims, which you could say might make them better consumers because they would be more cognizant of what things cost, because once they hit their $500 deductible, the next $1,500, they actually have to file a paper claim or an online claim with DBS to get reimbursed for that under the HRA. Does that make sense?
Whereas now it's automatic. It's what we call a sweep account, DBS and GHT. They send a file to each other so that it's automatic. DBS cuts a check automatically to the provider.
So the employee never really feels like they have a $2,000, $4,000 deductible. They meet their $500, and once the $500's paid, DBS pays until GHT kicks in. Anthem doesn't have that relationship with DBS, so the employee would have to submit claims for everything from $500 to $2,000. And then the other thing, that Anthem has a much more conservative definition of preventative care than GHT does. We talked a little bit about this the last time around. If you're going, I guess the best example is if you're going to a mammogram every year, your first mammogram every year is covered under preventative with GHT. But if you're getting a mammogram because you have a concern, it is no longer called preventative care. It falls under your deductible and your co-pays. Or if you're having a colonoscopy and it's because you have a concern, it's not considered preventative care anymore. I mean, it's still covered, but it's covered under your deductible and co-pays. So that'll be a huge change for some of our employees that are used to that first preventative thing of every year being covered no matter what the diagnosis is. So did I explain that
Yes.
well? Okay.
That's exactly.
Does that make sense?
So if the doctor orders it, it's preventative, but if you feel like you have something that needs to be checked out, then it's not.
Not quite. So I'll use the example of if I'm a diabetic and I go in, you're supposed to go in twice a year. Every time I go in, even if it's for my annual exam, because I'm a diabetic, it's going to go in under a diagnostic code. So it's not going to be coded as preventive because the doctor's going to be checking my A1C and going to be, doing some check to make sure that my diabetes hasn't progressed, even though it might still be my annual physical, right? So under GHT, because that would be my first visit of the year, even though it carries with it a diagnosis, GHT processes that as preventive, therefore not subject to the deductible or coinsurance. Anthem would process that as diagnostic because it is truly diagnostic, and it would be subject to the deductible. So it is it's one of the noisier differences, I think, between the way Anthem pays for these visits versus the way GHT pays for these visits.
I want to cover 8%, we're covering at 3.
Dr. Cartwright?
I think also, and it can also be interpreted a variety of different ways, right? So another thing also, this would actually encourage our employees to get in on their preventative care and go ahead prior to you suspecting that something is wrong, and on an annual, keeping on your schedule, your health schedule that you should do. So for example, if you're of a certain age, women, we know that we're supposed to go every 2 years to go get a mammogram, right? Or whether it be a pap smear, or whether it be what have you for gentlemen for some of their routine type of things. Whereas with GHT, it wouldn't have mattered if prevented or not, it would have been covered. On this one, it's actually encouraging our employees to please go in and get checked before you suspect something actually occurring.
And it could steer some usage to our clinic too, as if it's, they don't do mammograms obviously at the clinic.
Or colonoscopies or some of the other,
But if you're just having a physical,
right.
you could have your physical, we could promote more use of the 3 Waves Clinic in this case.
Yep.
These just, I apologize, this wasn't included in your slides in the board packet. These are the people who are in the Anthem Provider Network. So some of the ones that, like Ascension, right here in town, Mercy would not be included. Those who live in Fond du Lac and go to Ignesian is not included. But again, 70 to maybe, I can't remember, 70 to 75% of our claims are in this network.
And just for clarification purposes, claims do not mean your employee population. Claims only represents of our employees who put in a claim last year. So of our employees who put in some type of claim last year, 70 to 75% would have been within an Anthem provider. So that would be representative of approximately 3/4 of claims,
Of the
not
dollars.
your employees.
Right, of the dollars, exactly.
I just want to put this up there, even though we've said that at the bottom, we're not recommending it. Network Health, even though they didn't come in as one of our lowest providers, they administer a program that they call a family savings plan. And how it works is if your employee's spouse has access to other health care, you steer that employee to the spouse's health plan. And the reason they brought it forward is because they then administer the plan. We still, as a district, maintain a health insurance plan. We just steer people off our plan whose spouse has access to other insurance. How some companies do it is the district pays the premium differential, so like our district pays 88% of the premium, the employee picks up 12% of the premium. If the employee's spouse's company only pays 80%, so the employee now has to pay more towards the premium, you could pay that differential. So if they stayed on our plan, they'd pay so much out of pocket. If they have to pay more out of pocket in this other plan, the district could pay the difference. They also say that if the other employee's plan has a higher deductible and higher copays, but they go to a network health provider, the plan pays for all of those out-of-pocket costs up to a set level. Probably you would set the level at what a family plan costs us so that it wouldn't cost any more than if that employee stayed on our plan. The benefit of it is it gets people off our health plan. You can make it mandatory or voluntary. I'm a little concerned that our community might not look at this well, even though sometimes they're critical of our health plan. A lot of businesses have employees on our health plan rather than theirs because we do have a better health plan. And so now all of a sudden, if you are forcing people off our plan onto other businesses in the community's plan, that might not be perceived as too positive. But, Network Health did share this as an option that they themselves as a company do and that they would be willing to administer for the school district. So I thought we'd at least share it, even though I don't know if it's really a good idea at this time.
And just an addendum to that, this would be regardless of what insurance company the district would choose to go. So this is a supplemental component.
Oh, okay.
This is a very new program in the Midwest. It's been being administered out east. ABRC was just introduced to it in December of last year for the very first time. So this is a pretty new concept. We thought we would just kind of keep noodling on it and discussing it, and there may be other players that enter this market in the future, don't know, but at the moment Network is the innovator of it. So they wanted to bring it forward to the district as an innovation in the health insurance world.
Some districts have gone down the path of a family surcharge, that if you have access to other health care and you don't take it, you pay more to stay on the district's plan. That's been on the budget cutting list a couple times, and we have not implemented that because I just have not been a proponent of that personally. But some businesses and districts go down that path, that instead of forcing people off our plan, they charge them more to stay on our plan if you have access to other plans. We haven't looked at that yet, but I know that that's something that AFG has looked at or talked about too. The Strategic Benefits Committee did give some feedback based on the interviews that they did of the two groups. And again, they're comprised of representatives from all employee groups, so all employee groups are represented on this committee. They would like the district to stay with GHT, but negotiate with GHT to get the premium increase down to budget, which we did. We outlined some options there. They were also willing to raise the employee deductible from $500,000, which it is now, to $750,000, $1,500. And the reason that the $750,000, $1,500 is because when we negotiated with GHT to get their premium increase down from 9% to 8%, their plan was to raise the $2,000, $4,000 to $2,250 to $4,500. This by raising the employee deductible from $500 to $750, the employee is eating that increase. The district is not taking on that increase. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. The only other thing I want to throw out there is something that came to my attention this last year is we only pay, even though we have retiree coverage that we've now switched, so we have some people grandfathered in and some people not. GHT has always provided a Medicare supplement. So when people are off the district plan because they're 65 and they're on Medicare, GHT offers people a Medicare supplement that the employee, the retiree themselves pays for, But that claim history, if claims are more than premium, that hits our claim history. And so it negatively affects the district's claim history. So one of the proposals is if we're going down a path of trying to save money or make changes, that we get out of the Medicare supplement business. And either we kind of grandfather people or we work with, I mean, GHT is willing to, AFG is willing to work with some of those people to help them find other supplemental insurance. That shouldn't be on the district's, that negative claim history shouldn't be on the district's dime, if that makes sense. So that's questions or comments?
I have a quick question. So the, you know, for the prescription cost, when you said it isn't much, how much, like, what do you have any idea what some of those numbers are? Because what is little to some is, you know, a lot to others, and.
We now have on this sheet that I gave you that it was included in the packet, we now have a 0, 15, 45, and 90 drugs.
Yeah.
That's now going from 15, 45, 90, and 150.
Okay.
So right now, there are some drugs that employees can get for 0 copay.
Right.
They would now have to pay $15 for.
Okay.
But now some of those drugs are available by going to 3 waves. Not
Right.
all, but
Right.
some.
Some of them
And so
are.
if someone
Okay.
pays $15 for a drug copay now, they pay $45.
Okay.
$45 would now go to 90, so it almost double, and then 90 would go to 150.
And then at the Three Waves Clinic, they can bring their family there.
Yes.
Is there a pediatrician there that's for preventive care for their kids?
No.
Okay.
But they will do some care down to, I forget, is it age 2?
I think 2 is the youngest. to
Okay.
be.
So they're 2 years up and
2
they'll
years
do
and
all
up. They won't do
the infants, yeah, because of
infants.
all of their
Right.
vaccinations
Right.
and things.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
Any other comments or questions?
If I may just give a highlight as
Yes.
well. I think want to make sure that we make it publicly known and duly noted that last year the board wanted to ensure that our employee groups were aware of that this was coming back to the table a year later.
Mhm.
So we've been very conscientious, especially like for our wellness meetings and different things like that where our employee group representatives are present, just to say we know that this is going to be coming back up in a year, and so we've been mindful of that. We were also mindful of ensuring that we had participation from each of the groups through this bid process. Through that, and even at convocation, ensuring that we made a special announcement to remind employees that this would be discussed during the September board meetings.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Any other questions or comments? Well, again, Mrs. Schnorr and guests, we thank you for the time, energy, and effort that went into this. This is, again, a very significant part of our budget, as well as a service provided to employees, and we appreciate the effort that went into this report tonight, so thank you all very much. With that, we'll move on to the third workshop, which is equity with Dr. Brown and Ms. Conrad.
And as they're setting up, just want to talk with the board and say that we're extremely excited for this presentation for you. This is one of the presentations that was requested by the board to learn more information about the work of the district and what we are currently undergoing as a system-wide plan that's in place at this point in time that we started last year with our administrators, rolled out some additional training this summer, and are now currently undergoing across the entire district.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright.
All right, thank you. I'm Julie Conrad, the Director of Curriculum and Assessment.
I'm Kim Brown, Director of Learning.
And so through our lens, we are helping to lead this work district-wide. If you recall back in August, Matt Kemmer and I had talked to you about our PK-12 supportive and alternative education program plan, and we had alluded to we're going to talk more about how do we address inequities and what our students need as a system rather than looking at individual one-off programs. And so this will help set that stage for that work and also give you more information on how we are approaching that from a systemic lens. So the goals for our workshop today is to provide you an overview of the Integrated Comprehensive System for Equity framework. Kim will tell you more about that. Understand the difference between deficit and asset-based thinking. That is a key learning that we are working with our educators on in our community, and identify how this learning connects to the work we have already started in the Oshkosh Area School District, because we've been doing a lot of great things as educators, which leads us into this slide. Kim and I, as we are presenting and working with our different school communities on equity, we use this slide over and over again to say that we have put together all kinds of wonderful things for children and programming. But what's happened when we're not paying attention to it as a system is it ends up like puzzle pieces. And until we start to really think about it and put it together in a very systemic way we are addressing this, this is where we can address our systems inequities, where we can streamline this and make sure that we are serving all students. Once we know better, we do better. And as we've been going through this work, that is what a lot of our educators are realizing, that we're asking questions about our systems. We're asking questions about the things we're doing, because does all really mean all? It doesn't mean that the work that we have done in the past was bad. It just means now that we know better, we're going to line things up and we're going to do better.
All right, and we have the work that we are going to be looking at is really grounded with Dr. Patira and Dr. Capper. And it was great when they came in to share that they had a research-based piece of how to go through equity. And so we're going to share a little bit more about that later, about what we learned as we were in the workshop and as we've been rolling things out with everyone.
So as I talk through the next few slides, and as we are giving you examples, please keep in mind that we're not giving examples that may necessarily mean about a particular school in the Oshkosh Area School District. We're just talking about schools in general, like within our state, within the nation, maybe worldwide, when we're talking about a school system. So please just keep that in mind. But as we talk through this, you're probably going to realize, or you're going to think of, I think I've seen that within a system. I think I have seen that in play at times. So just keep that in mind, that we're talking in large generalities. So as we have been talking about addressing equity as a system, we know that in America we have persistent inequities, that our schools, through our best intentions at times, we have a history and a culture of marginalization in a lot of these areas or subgroups, and also how they intersect, because a staff member or a child could be identified in any of those subgroups. So one of those pieces, in a way that each of those subgroups, or how we may identify children or people that we work with, is poverty or low socioeconomic status, however you want to term it. And as we start to look at this, schools are looked to over and over again to how do we combat poverty? Because it's very often said education is the way that you can overcome poverty, that you can overcome your circumstances, etc. But as we've been looking at school as a system, we're noticing that you have a student, and often with students that come with challenges, that come from a background of poverty, we are looking at them from a deficit view, the way we were looking at the child, or the way we were looking at the family. And one author who is the author of Starting a Movement is Ken Williams, and one of his hashtags is, you label them low, you teach them low. And so, and I haven't hashtagged that before, but it goes along with some things I've said. But we set up low expectations for students with the best intent, because we're trying to help them, right? But then we label, we place, we remediate, we track, then we group, we perpetuate that failure, then we blame society. It's like we're in this continuous loop. So what do we do about that? How do we address this system? Because at times we're blaming the child instead of looking at the system. So I want you to just consider these questions. If our goal is to advance learning, and this is the first goal in our strategic planner, it's essentially that, right? If our goal is to advance learning for all students across all of their identities, are we succeeding? How are we serving the needs of all students? How are we addressing the needs of students in the general education classroom? In other words, are we addressing things for students universally with all of their peers in school so that we aren't pulling students out, but provide for their needs? And is our response to innovation process, where we're providing interventions, we're saying we're bringing in supports, is that truly working? Because when we start to look at that from a systems lens, all these questions are raised. If we're doing all these things, why isn't it working? Why are kids still failing? Oops.
All right, so the approach that we're using, there's some things that it is, and we want to make sure that we emphasize that with you. So it really is a framework to foster equity. It is a process that we're going to go through, and we'll share that in the next slide. It's research and evidence-based, 45 years of research behind that, and it's a journey that we're taking. What it's not is it's not an initiative. It is not a model or a program, and it's definitely not an equity workshop, because it's something that's going to be ongoing. And so here you see the framework, and you'll see that it's in cornerstones. So cornerstone 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cornerstone 1 is the focus on equity, and that will take at least a year to go through all the schools to take a look at that. And then we move into aligning the staff and students with that. And then cornerstone 3 is transforming teaching and learning, and then finally leveraging policy and funding. But what this entire ICS framework does is it's a system to approach and eliminate inequities in our district. And so within each of those, for schools, there are 15 steps. For us as a district level, there's 17 steps that we'll be going through in order to take a look. Before we talked about, we had the best of intentions. We've been doing things for a long time because we really wanted to make sure we were meeting the needs of all kids. What Julie and I found out is a lot of our efforts were all focused on step 3. Equity begins with us, identity development for systems change, but we were really, truly not hitting all those other pieces. And so this was a huge aha when we went to hear Dr. Fatira and Dr. Capper to go, oh, we are missing a few things, and perhaps that's why we're not moving the needle as much as we thought we could or should.
Right. So as we attended the conference and we worked with other districts that are also going on this journey, this was the first time we went, oh, there is, how do you pull all the research together to start to roadmap where do we go from here? So we were pretty excited about that. So if we do this and we are really taking a look at as a systems, what we're hoping we're going to do, what we believe we can do, is advance learning for all students across their identities, so that it doesn't matter how they intersect or what a child's identity is. We are supporting them, and we are supporting them in a universal way that makes sure that all truly means all. So when we do that and we are taking a look at that, this is where we can truly disrupt the cycle of poverty. Because if you look at the cycle that we had before, let's flip it and let's look at it through an equity lens or an asset-based lens. So yes, you have a student that has their different identities and their background, but what we're going to do is, no matter what that background is or where they're coming from, we're going to engage with support, and we're going to learn from the student and the family and the community that they're coming from. We're going to honor that identity. And then looking at identity, development of self for that child, we could even be talking about the adults that work with that child. A key here is the assets view of the students and their families, building on strengths, because it's hard to build on gaps, so let's build on strengths, right? High expectations of a student, all students, because students can do it. We just have to figure out the best way to help and support them. The identity responsive rigorous learning. This was another key piece and dovetails right into all of the work that we are setting up through the strategic plan and in the curriculum and assessment department, but really being responsive and rigorous in our learning, because what we want is we want the student to graduate without a skill. We want them to graduate. We want them to graduate with the skills. We want them to be ready post-secondary. I believe we say in our district, college, career, and community ready, because then it's the opportunity not to be in those circumstances when we look at this through the equity lens.
So Steele and Aronson did some really important studies on perceptions and how critical they are. And so we talk about stereo threat. And that's when you lower the performance when their marginalized identity is reinforced. So something as simple as taking a standardized test, if they have to identify their race and gender ahead of time, that could give them a stereotype threat depending on their own perceptions of themselves. And then in the reverse, the stereotype lift, it could also increase the performance when others informed of others in the room that they feel like, oh, I've got this. So it's something that happens in schools that we need to be really aware of, and it's occurring quite a bit. And so the first step is awareness, and then moving forward, and that's really about what that whole cornerstone one is that awareness, so we can move forward. All right, so this is the interactive part. In your personal notes, we want you to just write down high, middle, and low. And we want you to just jot down, this is only for you, we're not going to share it with anyone.
Or you can think about it. It's
Right.
totally up
We're
to
only
you.
going to give you like a minute and 15 seconds to do this activity. And we're going to ask you to list the stereotypes and assumptions that you have ever heard for each of these categories. So it's not about what your beliefs are, but what are some things that you have heard regarding high socioeconomic class, middle class, and low socioeconomic status. All right, and it looks like you all have at least one in a category. So we'll take it from there. Oh, sorry. It's okay. So we're going to run through some research with you. This is from the work of Paul Gorski. What does the research say relative to frequent assumptions about students from lower social class homes? So we're just going to volley through those.
So reflect on and think about some of the things that you wrote down as we go through some of these statements. And I'll take the first one, Kim. Okay?
Mhm.
So often there's a low income stereotype, and that's laziness. A vast majority of people who are poor do work, and you can see the citation, and according to the Economic Policy Institute, adults who are poor and working spend more hours working per week on average than their wealthier counterparts.
Another stereotype is that they do not value education. And the fact is, the parents who are low income have the exact same attitudes about education as parents who are wealthy.
Substance abuse. Alcohol abuse is far more prevalent among people who are wealthy than people who are low income, and you can see the citations. And drug use equally is distributed across poor, middle class, and wealthy communities.
Crime and violence. People who are low income do not commit more crime than people who are wealthy. They only commit more visible crime. Furthermore, white-collar crime results in much greater economic and life losses than so-called violent crime.
Language deficient. Linguists have known for decades that all varieties of English, such as Black English Vernacular or Appalachian varieties, or you can name the dialect or the accent or the region, are equally complex in structure and in grammar.
Bad parents. Research has continued to show that parents who are low income care just as much about their children and work just as hard or harder to advocate for their children as parents who are wealthier.
So as you go through there, that we have done that activity several times, going through there with research citations, etc., and about how have our stereotypes or perceptions or things that we have thought or we've heard from other people been perpetuated over time. And so some of this has to do with deficit-based language versus asset-based language. And so what we've worked quite a bit on is being very cognizant about what deficit thinking or language do you experience or hear in your setting. And we have done this with our principals, with our instructional support teachers, with our educators, and really challenging them that when you start busting up stereotypes and when you start doing this, it starts with thinking through an asset-based lens and using and calling out every time that you're seeing deficit-based language. And it's hard. It is hard because we have things in place in the way that we're required to report, the way that we're required to do data for students, and the way that we're required to do things at time is counterintuitive to this. But we have to challenge ourselves to constantly be taking a look at a child through an asset-based lens. Oops, there you go.
And so this is an identity wheel, and you can see all the different ways that identity can be put on, that is out there. But we're just going to take you to this chart because truly, you know, we have identity aspects. And so just to give you an example, deficit versus asset language. And so I'm just going to let you kind of peruse that for a moment, just to get an idea. And then we highlighted the ones that says goals because that's one that really we are, I mean, all of them we're cognizant of, but these are also things that as a whole team, we want to make sure that we are talking about increasing graduation and using person-centered language as we go. And instead of saying, oh, the students who are at risk, it's students who are in need of support. And so it's that asset versus deficit language and just sharing that
and
out.
Always keeping that the person or the child comes first. And you've heard me talk about it's not refugee students, it's students and families with refugee background because that does not define the person.
Correct.
It's a student with disabilities. And also think about this, it's a student athlete. You know, it's like you always have to come from the person-centered piece of this.
Correct.
So, as we've been doing this and trying to work with our staff, working through our strategic plan, working with you today, is how do we #put it all together, right? Because we're doing all these different things. Think of all the different puzzle pieces that were on there. How do we start to put it all together? Because this year we're working on equity. So how are we connecting the things we're doing with equity? We are doing a reboot, we're calling it the reboot, on standards-based learning at our secondary level and really looking at assessments at our elementary level. So how does this all come together and connect with equity? Well, when you're in Cornerstone 1, we're really focusing on that equity and thinking about how are we looking at all of these things as we are working with students. Because as a district, we've been doing a lot of great things. We have all these building blocks. So think about if you have had children, or if you're a kid and you've ever had a whole pile of Legos, there's a lot of things there, right? And there's a lot of potential. But when you look at that pile, it's just a pile. But when you start taking all of the assets that we have, all of the learning that we've already done as a district, all of the pieces that we already have in place, there are lots of things that when you start to put it together in a system, or you start building on those assets and building on those strengths, what can you possibly build with those pieces or those Legos? And it can be anything that you, Hogwarts, anything that you imagine that it can be. Because that's our job through this, and that's what we are doing through this framework, is we're using that equity piece to help us put it all together.
And so we just want to give you a moment to either write down or quietly reflect on what learning you want to hold on to from tonight's presentation. And then, of course, what questions do you have for us?
We also encourage you that as a board, that we know that you do plus deltas, and so if there's something also that you would like to write in there, we would love the feedback as well.
And I'll be sure to collect that information from you a little bit different.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Just one of the slides that you showed us, I didn't think was in here.
Yeah, I know which one.
It was
Right
the one,
here.
the chart. You brought us to the wheel,
Here.
and then you put us to that chart.
Oh,
there,
the
there was a link.
Yeah, it's a link that you can check on.
Yep.
Right.
All right,
You just
thank
click
you.
on the link.
I got it now.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I reviewed that before, because I realized even after going through the slides and I looked back at the goals that you had for us, I'm like, wait, I didn't catch the deficit and asset base, so I clicked on that link and saw it, and I just want to say thank you for that. I think it's a wonderful tool. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's my takeaway, is definitely that language and just, that's, you know, obviously when people say that deficit-based language, they don't mean it that way. But it, like you said, it's that awareness of when you say it the opposite, just because that's what the little ones hear.
Right.
That's a big difference.
And that's the thing, is that we're all full of good intentions.
Yes.
But are we paying attention to the impact?
Right.
When we know better,
We do better.
And I think one of the important things, you know, in this conversation is acknowledging that you can learn and improve and change and redefine how you understand this. And I think that's really important. I just make the example of your example of using people-centered words or people-centered models. Long before I got into the public housing world, I worked as an advocate for persons with disabilities.
Exactly.
And so this utilizing language structure in this way is something that was redefining to me 10 plus years ago, because I was learning that at that point. And it just kind of shows you that any community is ready and should be open to this redefining of how we look at people, especially the people that we serve, and how they benefit from the supports and services that we're trying to provide in the community. And I think that's an important step to acknowledge, that part of it just comes with how we talk about the people that we serve and their abilities and who they are and their backgrounds. And it's all of that stuff is very important. And, you know, and our communities are based on those things, and how and just a little bit more, like right now there's been a conversation going on in the community by a representative from the Salvation Army, Al Rolfe, talking about generational poverty. And this fits right into that as well. You know, so you know, listening to your presentation and perusing this stuff gets me excited to be talking about this, because I'll be actually spending half my day talking about that stuff tomorrow. And so it feeds right into that. So it's good timing for this, and I say that this is something that not just our school district needs, but it's also something that our community needs also as well. So this is pioneering in my mind. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? The way this ties in with our civility project, which a previous board has adopted and is included in, I believe, in our board policy. I think one of the challenges for many of us is the fact that there are those stereotypes out there, and with all the media availabilities we have, there's so many of those stereotypes that are perpetuated.
Yes.
I mean, any of you could pull out your devices right now and find examples, whether it's in the news or it's a television show or a movie or whatever. So helping our students and our staff and our community really look at things from a positive lens, that the glass is half full, not half empty. To me, that fits right in with that. So I'm really happy that you presented this evening. I know that equity has been included in at least one previous strategic plan, and it's included in the new one. And I think it's really important that the board be on board with what training is going on in the district. And so I thank you for putting this together and for the work you've done to provide this professional development to our staff. Any other comments or questions?
I would just add that the Wisconsin Association of School Boards had the Equity Symposium in July. So this is being presented to all school boards, and it's exciting to know that as a district, we are ahead on that. You know, you guys are right there with it.
And one of their recent publication speaks about equity. And that means all kinds, as you pointed out. It's not just one focus, it's everything. Thank you. Dr. Cartwright.
I just wanted to make sure that I pointed out to staff members, extremely proud of the work that Dr. Brown and Ms. Conrad have been doing with this. Though executive team, members of executive team have been on the same journey, I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due on a lot of the finite details of this, because this is extremely important. And Ms. Lodgy, I'm very appreciative of you noticing, but again, this is a prime example where the Oshkosh Area School District is being innovative and being cutting edge and leading us in the right direction, so that all means all.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. With that one, we will move on to the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. The board will consider approval of 1, personnel resolution. A, appointments, temporary appointments, resignations, and salaries. 2, resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in an amount not to exceed $10 million. Issuance of tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes and participation in the PMS levy and aid anticipation notes program.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Peschel.
Aye.
Peschel, aye. Szilagyi.
Aye.
Szilagyi, aye. Carlin.
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Evans.
Aye.
Evans, aye. Garner.
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog.
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted.
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Are there any individually considered resolutions for tonight? Seeing none. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is to appoint a committee member. We recently formed a new board committee, a legislative committee, and that is chaired by Mr. Evans, and Mrs. Carlin also serves on that committee. When we formed that committee and appointed those 2 individuals, we had a spot for a 3rd person, and so I would like to appoint Mrs. Szilagyi to that 3rd spot, and she has been contacted and has agreed to serve. So we're grateful to have a committee back up to 3 members there. So thank you. You are appointed.
We tried to appoint you when you weren't here.
Yeah, I know. I was watching it in Utah, and I was like, yes, I would do that. But
I was already like, yeah, do it, and I don't know who said it. No, we can't. I'm like, oh, yeah, we can. That's what you and I. If you don't come, you're on the committee.
Yeah, that's how it happens.
Now, being a new committee, how do we go about setting up a meeting date?
That's a good question. I think Dr. Cartwright has something to say about that.
I will get with Sherry in order to go ahead and survey the 3 of you as to what are some of the better opportune times and dates within the month in order to go ahead and set up a first meeting. Also, we'll work with the chair on this in order to come up with some potential agenda items.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Are there any requests for future agenda items tonight? Okay. Moving on, any announcements tonight? I was just going to share, and I forgot to do that in the board president's report when I was talking about CESA 6. Mr. Knightsky, who is the CEO of CESA 6, noted that there is legislation that will make its way through the state legislature dealing with the Blue Ribbon Commission. And you may remember that we went through all of the recommendations there, so that might be something that the legislative committee might want to take up in terms of what's pending and how our committee might choose to take a look at some of those recommendations. These would be primarily policy items, I believe. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for 1, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85 paren 1 paren E, A, health insurance, and B, property sale.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Salaji?
Aye.
Salaji, aye. Carlin?
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Garner?
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog?
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted?
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Peschel?
Aye.
Peschel, aye. Motion carried.
All right, this meeting is adjourned to executive session. Thank you very much.